everyone, and welcome once again to the vast and ominous comic book vault. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Steve.
Steve is here with me to review the first couple digital issues of Batman 66. Now, usually brand new issues, Steve, I cover, of course, on new acquisitions, but this is something I wanted to do outside of that because it came out a couple weeks ago, so it's not new anymore, and or the first issue, and I didn't notice it the first week it came out, which is crazy, because I've been touting this up since we first heard about it. I have not been able to wait for this series, and I didn't even know it was out. I didn't see solicitations anywhere. I didn't see any like advertisements in the comics. Nothing.
Well, after the first press release, it just kind of went dark. Like, I don't think I've heard anything about it for at least a good month or so. Like, I didn't even know it was out until you mentioned it.
Yeah, me neither. And so that's part of why we wanted to do a separate video on this, just so that we could talk about it a little bit at length. And we're not seeing a lot of reviews on it and stuff, so we thought people might want to know about it and what it's like in case you didn't want to look at it. And a lot of folks don't generally read digital. I think, first off, right out the gate, Steve and I both really enjoyed this. We have some negative things to say about it, but I think that, Steve, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you would agree with me if I were to say that even if you don't read digital, read this in digital. Don't wait for print.
Yeah, seems to be the only digital comic I've ever read that seems to require digital. Like, I don't want this in print. I like seeing how the panels play out in front of each other. I know when Vince mentioned in one of your videos how it's hard to read a comic because you immediately know what's happened to the next page, so it's hard to be surprised. With this, if you know the 60s show, if you have nostalgia for it, everything is just kind of in your face and bright and vibrant, and it really adds to the atmosphere. This works a lot better in digital than it would in print.
These promo pictures that they put out before the series a couple months ago is in the interior exactly what this book looks like. It is Art Deco, and it's, like you said, it's bright, it's vibrant, it's chipper. It's just what you would want to recapture the feeling that you had watching that TV show. But at the same time, it's much larger in scale, because they, of course, they don't have a TV budget. So I read an interview with Jeff Parker, who wrote this, who said that he wanted to do something where they could go a little bit bigger in scope, but not go too crazy over the top with it. Like this would be what this show would look like if they had a huge budget every week, feature film budget, but still in the 60s. He said they didn't want to do anything that looked like something you could only get away with in CGI. They wanted to do stuff that you could have made if you were making like a Bond film or something that you could make in that period. And I think it accomplishes that.
It does. I think right off the bat, we should note that if you like a dark Batman, if you haven't seen the 60s show, it's probably not going to be anywhere near as enjoyable as it would be for someone who's seen the show.
Oh, no, naturally. Yeah, this is for people that know that show. I mean, I think you might enjoy it if you have an open mind and you're okay with campy Batman, but it is here primarily to recapture the feel of the Adam West TV show.
I don't feel like it has as much meat if you don't know the 60s show. No, like, it's a lot of just flash, no substance if you don't know why it's like this. And on another note, I think this is something Frank Miller would love. Frank Miller always talks about how in movies you can control pace, you can control how long the camera stays on a particular image, and in comics it's up to you to make the reader slow down depending on your art or your words or narrative. With this as digital first, the way how fast-paced it is and how the panels pop out you and the way the color schemes are and the way the art is so nostalgic, it slows you down and speeds you up at such a really impressive pace that I don't think you should. I don't think it's right to not experience this digitally. It feels like this is really artistic with the way they put it out. Yeah,
they were really deliberate about what they chose to show you at what given point. This, unlike a lot of digital comics, does not give you the option to go panel to panel or full page, because it's not that kind of comic book. It's not. I don't think it gives you that. It's not in traditional panel layout at all. It's not like one of those things where it'll go to a panel and then zoom out and then go into another thing, and then maybe they'll be cool and show you like something before or like later than you would see it if you just read or before you would see it if you just read it in print. But this, it's meant to be read this way. I don't know what this would look like in regular panels. Like, if they do this in print, I can't wait to see what the panel layouts look like, because I don't know how they could possibly capture that.
You remember when you were a kid, you'd go in the storybook section, you'd find those pop art books? I think like this is this generation's version of a pop art book. It's really gimmicky, but it's a lot of fun. It has a lot of nostalgia. I think this is probably the best all ages thing DC is putting out right now. Because
yeah, that's a great point.
It's a lot of fun, and it's nothing that could go over your head.
Also, I think maybe kids would enjoy this, little kids, even if they don't know what the 66 show is.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is just something that's really accessible. It's a lot of fun, and, like, there's nothing in here to be overly critical about.
No, certainly not. One of the things I wanted to mention also about the, I almost said panel layout, but again, it's not really in panels. It's kind of like the perfect crossroads between a motion comic and traditional comic book.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Because it kind of is motion comic-y, especially in that it doesn't give you the dialogue balloons right away for a lot of things. Like you'll see a character, and then the dialogue balloon will pop up. What that affords you is it lets people react to things. I don't want to say naturally, but more naturally. Like something will happen, that'll pop up, and then you'll have that person there already, and then their reaction to it will pop up in the balloon.
Right. It's a little bit more cinematic that way. And do you want to go into criticism just really quick, because there isn't really much to say about it?
Yeah. Before we criticize it, let me say that another cool thing about it is that it is the traditional 66 Batman formula. So we do get to open it up with the narrator guy, and that's written just like I'm hearing the narrator in my head. Actually, Steve and I were reading this together, and I was reading those out loud because it was really fun to get that voice in your head. And it's if you're curious about how they're doing the format with this, it's like 8 or 9 pages. It's hard to tell because it's barely in pages. But it's like the
page on this.
Yeah, it's like the 8 or 9 page thing for 99 cents, like you get with a lot of digital comics. So 2 of those gives you the first half hour of an hour 66 Batman show. Remember that the formula of that was always you get to the end of an episode and then Batman's in a death trap, and then you gotta wait to find out what happens in the next episode. It's doing that in 4 of these, because at the end of this, you do get a death trap.
Yeah, it definitely works the way a 60s Batman episode worked, and I think what's also really great about this, like, a lot of shows seem to be doing this digital comic or print thing, like Season 11 of Smallville or Season 9 Buffy or anything like that. A lot of those comics have the problem of doing something that was never in the scope or never in the realm of what that TV show could do. Like, part of what I hated about Angel After Fall was that it was too much effects. It didn't have the charm that Angel did. And this, even though some of the action is a bit more spectacular, it still has the feel, it still has the atmosphere and charm of what a 60s show would be like. Like, I don't feel like any of this could be, anything like this isn't, like, all this is practical and it's still feasible in a 60s environment.
Yeah. I think so too. The other thing that's amazing is how well this is capturing the facial expressions of the villains. And Batman and Robin too, but I mean, like, man, when Gorshin first showed up, I geeked out hard. Because he's got this panel where he's got his tongue sticking out like he always did in that show, and it's really cool. And it's not like a trace job or anything. It doesn't look like the artist just. This is Jonathan Case, who I don't know, but now I want to find out what else he did because this art's amazing.
It really is.
It's like he doesn't look like he goes back and just like traces those facial expressions. It feels like he's doing his own thing with it, but it's the epitome of what those looked like. And the same thing with this Julie Newmar Catwoman.
I think what this kind of feels like is scripts that were left on the cutting room floor of that show because they just couldn't do it.
Do you think?
It kind of does. Like, I feel like it's written in that sense. It's just adapted to work as like a weekly comic series.
Okay, because starting to go into criticisms, then I don't totally agree with you. I think that there's not quite enough meat here. It is pretty action driven.
Yeah, it is really action-driven, and no one has nearly enough to say.
That's the thing, is that this was a dialogue-driven show, and I think that this comic book, because it wants to be so fun and poppy, it's getting away with a lot of its fun through big action set pieces. Which it's fun to see these characters in that environment because we've never really seen that before. So I appreciate that. I still feel like you could have a lot more quipping from Batman and a lot more quipping from the villains. Like, I feel like there are balloons. Tell me if you'd agree with this, Steve. I think that there are balloons that could have been set in to have these characters having more banter in the middle of what's going on. It's just underwritten, I think, is the criticism I would give it.
Yeah, I think that's always kind of been a staple of the show. I think what this needed, because this book does have the digital thing where someone hits something and then the next panel will show, like, the power or the sound effect.
That's cool.
I think what this needed was you get, like, the action, like a punch, then you get the dialogue balloon, and then you get the effect over it. Like, I feel like this would be what Deadpool is, where it's just, like, a lot of talking in the middle of an action scene. Because, like, it's hard to get, like, a voice or a pitch on any of these characters from what their dialogue is. All of my Adam West nostalgia is coming from the way he looks, not really what he's saying.
He's got a couple of lines that are very Adam West and hilarious, but for the most part, you're absolutely right about that.
I think my favorite panel of both of these issues is when the Batmobile is going off the bridge and the Riddler is saying Batman and Robin, and it says, "'Tis the Batmobile" on the other side. Like, I feel like that feels like a really cool 60s action movie poster, and it just puts me back in that perfect environment of watching the show growing up and thinking it's spectacular. But at the same time, I feel like it's just a little too far.
Yeah, I think my favorite panel is when you is when you finally get to see Julie Newmar's Catwoman.
Yeah, that was still a great reveal. I thought she was drawn perfectly. I'm not sure how the artist was able to do some of this stuff, but it really does feel like he had, like, photo models or mannequins or something to capture the expression. Because even, like, the hand movements and the way they tilt their heads, it feels like the posture and the gestures of the 60s actors.
And I also think it's kind of fun, and I don't know if I'm going to like this moving forward, but it's in that formula of that show all the way to, like, you get to the end and like the announcer voice says has a question for you before it ends. You know, it goes that far, and but then it's still turning some things on its head. Like, without giving too much away, Batman doesn't solve everything right away in this, which is really counter to that show. But maybe that's okay. Like there's maybe going to be a bit more dimension to this, where, like, Riddler, you know, he's got a clue he's supposed to solve, and he thinks he solved it, and he actually thought too far. That never happens in that show. That's really interesting. I wonder where they're going to go with that.
I feel like that's the show kind of making having its cake and eating it too, because a lot of what's here would be problems for someone who didn't read the show.
Yeah. Or watch the show.
When you have those scenes that are contrary to the show, it would be something that someone who didn't watch the show would like. Like, Batman not being able to solve the puzzle, that would make it interesting if you didn't know the show, because it'd be something unique in this comic. At the same time, everything that I normally would find in, like, an issue like none of the characters having depth or it being really flashy is something a 60s fan would really love. Like, it feels like you can't please everyone with what they're trying to do here.
That's true, but I feel like as a fan of that show, kind of wanting it to be exactly what it was, he's already starting to get me a little bit out of that mindset. Like, maybe he can get me to a point where I'm okay with it, and this comic ends up being its own thing still, ultimately. Right. And I don't know if you agree with that, but I think it could work. It just depends on how far he goes with it.
I think that would ultimately disappoint me, though, because it may be its own thing and it might be really good, but the way it opened just had me so enthused and so happy that it might just be like the 60s show all over again.
Yeah.
It kind of, like, set itself up to be really high and then just kind of trail off in a direction I didn't think it was starting off with.
That's fair. Yeah. I feel like I gotta have the second part. I'm sorry, say that again?
I just said I thought issue 1 was better than issue 2.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, I gotta tell you, man, I bought the first issue because I was just really curious and thought, oh man, I don't want to have to do that because I know I'll buy this in print. And now I'm really glad I did, and will continue, I think, to buy this in digital issues because I feel like it's gotta be read that way.
Yeah, I think it's really worth it. Even if I go back and get the print issues, I think I'm still going to reread it on my computer or my phone just because the experience is all there. Like I mentioned before with the DC Squared thing that they're doing, where they're adding sound effects and soundtracks to their comics. I feel like this show or this comic could work really well as like a mini series on YouTube or a motion comic. Because motion comics are usually kind of dumb, but I think this really kind of warrants it.
Oh yeah, I would pay real money to see Adam West come in and voice this.
Oh yeah, I would love that. This is a nostalgia fest, top to bottom. It's just, I don't know, maybe we're overthinking it just a bit.
I think we are.
'Cause I don't want to hate it, but at the same time, I feel like it's not exactly my childhood.
But I don't hate it either. Is the thing like I don't know. I'm coming a little bit farther over to the line with Jeff Parker after the end of that second issue, thinking maybe adding a little dimension is okay. You know,
Yeah. Although, I think part of what made the 60 show success so interesting was that it wasn't dimension, it was just the kind of stereotypical hero-villain plot, and it just had the unique bat spin on it, which made it really fun for me.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
it wasn't
sure.
necessarily anything that you had to think about. It just felt like something that could keep you entertained. It was something that wasn't like the Lone Ranger, it wasn't like Green Hornet. It was its own entity with the same stereotypes. When you add dimension, it just seems like it's pulling away from, I'm not even sure what the word is. It feels like it's pulling away, leading too much into what a comic book should be, rather than what a 60s drama should be.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. At the same time, there was a reason that this show was so successful at the outset and tanked fast.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it was just the same thing every single time, and people just lost interest very quickly. I feel like this might ultimately end up being a best of both worlds thing, where it's like an experiment to reimagine this in such a way where it can still be all of those really fun, hilarious cliches, but not be exactly the same thing every time. Because when I say dimension,
Yeah.
I don't mean it's like super deep and I got a bunch of thematic stuff to talk about. You know, it's not that.
Nothing down there.
No, not at all.
I just kind of hope it stays that way. I hope that the dimension doesn't go so far as to, like, every issue has a lesson or a moral that you can learn from it. I kind of hope that it just stays the bare bones plot that it is, because I don't think a lot of people are going to buy this unless they know a 60s show. I don't think this will be successful with all ages. It won't be successful with, like, current Batman fans. It's going to be a nostalgia trip.
And the tough thing about this being digital first and being better as a digital thing than probably a print thing is a lot of the people that would want to read this are older than would probably buy digital.
Yeah. It's definitely attracting the kids, but it's meant for the adults.
I want my dad to read this, but he doesn't even, you know, use computers. So
yeah, I think all in all, for $2, it's worth it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's probably my second favorite DC book at the moment.
Wow. Well, I'll say it's definitely the best all ages thing going on, and that's saying something, because there's a few good things that I'm reading like that, but this is totally up there. Well, everybody, thanks as always for watching. We sure appreciate it, and do yourself a favor and check this out, especially if you like the 60s show, because I was impressed. If you ever want to send us anything to review on the Vault, you can always send that to our P.O. Box. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. Steve, thanks as always for joining me, and Steve and I will have another review for you very soon on Batman: A Lonely Place of Dying. So stay tuned. And I can tell you already that that review, I think, is pretty good because we've already recorded it.
Yep, it's like time travel because you're not getting that review yet.
Thanks again. We appreciate it. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Steve.
See you later.